Hi, and welcome to this continuing series of what's new in MayaStar, a more detailed look at the new features in MayaStar. In this video, we're going to look at probably the biggest improvement in MayaStar, and that is MyAniMATE Lite. Okay, so let's get started. Let's come here. I'm going to do a female original. You can use this with any MayaStarized avatar that you've done. You can also do it with any MayaStar avatar that you want. It doesn't really matter. So, okay. So, let's see. So let's look over the MyAniMATE Lite. Like I say, we have an avatar. It's a MayaStar avatar or a MayaStarized avatar. Doesn't matter which one. And now we're going to want to animate it. And you can have any of the slider settings. You can use any of the slider settings that you want. Let's go to body types. Let's go to voluptuous. Okay. You can even make her really tall. And in fact, if you are using a taller avatar, you want to make sure you go to the side view there and change the hover height so that her feet are not underneath the ground. There we go. Okay. Now once you do that, all you have to do is come in here. I'm going to close this. Come in here and click on MyAniMATE Lite. We'll do a .anim or anim animation first, then we'll do a BBH animation. So first thing you want to do is after you click on MyAniMATE Lite, click Generate Animation Skeleton. And if your mesh has any collision volume bones, or if it's fitted mesh bones or whatever, just click Yes. Okay, and it automatically puts it into the T-pose, which is the correct pose it needs to be in, so you don't even have to worry about that. And you can choose between what format. So this is where you choose which format are you going to want to be animating for. So I'm going to be animating for anim. .anim. And then it asks if you want to generate human IK or no rig. So if you had your own custom rig that you really like to use for animating with, you can just click no rig and then apply your own rig to the avatar, and so you can animate. But most of the time, you're always, probably 99% of the time, people are going to want to just use human IK. So you click human IK or HIK, and then boom, it's that easy. It's done. It's ready to animate with. It's ready to animate with. Okay, let's make the grid a little bit bigger, or not a little bit bigger, a lot bigger. This is the default grid. Let's do the no snapping. Meter size grid, no subdivision snapping. That means if we were to be moving this, it would pop to there. Actually, we don't want it to be no subdivision snapping. Let's leave it on subdivision snapping. You don't have to snap if you don't want to. You don't have to use this snap to grid if you don't want to. That's okay. It's just that you might find that there might be some instances where snapping to the grid is advantageous. So, okay, but I'm going to turn off snap to grid. Okay, so we're going to make a quick little animation. So let's say we want to make her left arm animate. So if I were to go here to animation and under animate and go to my set key, you can see I have S on my keyboard set to be the hotkey. So when I hit S, it does a set key. If I open up the options, all I'm using is the default options. That's all I'm using. And if I come over here to say frame 10 and I click apply, you can see I get a key there. Now, one of the great things about the human IK system, this is the new animation controls versus the old animation controls, which was called full body IK. The full body IK were very buggy. It wasn't my fault. It was the Autodesk. Never fully got the full body human IK all the bugs worked out of. They abandoned it early on and switched it in favor for human IK. So so this has been much more developed and all the bugs have been worked out, and this is what a lot of the major studios use for animating is Maya. So you get all the benefits of all the tools for animating with the human IK versus the full body IK. Okay, so you could do stuff like come here to frame 10, right mouse click, click copy. You can come over here to frame 36, click, left mouse click, and then right mouse click, and then paste it. And so now, since there's no difference between these two, it's not moving. Okay, but we could go to frame 24, and we could move the arm, say, down to there, and I can hit S on the keyboard and keyframe it. So you see the little red line, and now she's moving her arm like that, and that's just a loop animation. Real simple, quick loop animation. Okay, now if I wanted to make her move in three-dimensional space, I could come here and I could go back onto frame 10. So I've selected this controller, this big ring right here, hit S on the keyboard, click here, hit S on the keyboard, come to frame 24. Let's see, we'll come to frame 18. Come here and hit S on the keyboard again. Now if I wanted to, I could come here, copy that frame, come to frame 27 and paste it, and now she'll move out and she'll stay there, and then she'll move back. Okay, so we've made that nice little animation, and now let's say we want to export out the animation. You could either open MyAniMATE Lite up again and click Anim Export, or you could click Animation Export. Now this is always going to be a .anim export if you click on either one of those two. And I'm going to go over the settings here. If you want to use a BBH, you can use BBH, but you would click BBH in the setup first, so that you're at the right scale, because there's a difference between anim scale and BBH scale. So so we definitely, since we selected anim while we were setting this up, you want to use the anim exporter. So the first thing you would do is you want to click browse, and this will let you choose where you want to save your stuff to, right? And we're going to say I'm going to save it to the desktop. You don't type in anything in here, you just click save, and that sets where you're going to save it to. Then you can give it a title, anim demo for video. Okay, something like that. You can set your priority. You have to set all these things before you export them out. You can't set them in the upload window in Second Life, because .anim doesn't go through it. I mean, it just uploads the file. You know, so you got to set all this stuff before you upload it. Okay, so this is the priority. The higher priority number, the more it will override any other animations. So an animation that somebody else made that had a lower priority, you can have it set to play higher. You know, so its priority is higher, so your animation overrides the animation that's already being played. So this is where you set the priority, and this is just an overall priority for the whole animation. Okay. Then you have frame start and end. That's just what's going to be contained in the file that you export out. So frame 10 to frame 36. Then you have an ease in and ease out, just like you're used to with BBH. And then if you're going to be doing a looped animation like we have here, you click on loop, and this will be a looped animation. Now the loop does not have to be the same as the whole animate file itself, the frames in the animation file itself. Say you wanted to make a pose. Say you liked what it looked like on frame 18, and you wanted to use that as a pose. Well, you just make it in and out frame 18. Now this is now a pose instead of a loop. Well, it is technically a loop animation, but it's now a pose, and the avatar will just go to that pose and stay there. And so that's how you make a pose. But you still need to have all the keyframes in the start and end frame, so that if I wanted frame 16 to be the pose. And here, frame 16, I'd want to make sure that I get that the total animation has the frame at least starting from frame 10 and probably through frame 18 bare minimum. Otherwise, if you don't have those keyframes in there, it probably won't have the pose that you think it's going to have. Okay, so lots of times it's just easier to leave this be whatever the overall frame selection is in here, and you can set the frame selection in here by clicking here and dragging this to whatever frame you want. Okay, let's see. Okay, so that's if you were going to do a pose, but we're going to do frames 10 through frames 36 for the animation. Okay, then for the classic avatar, that's the Linden Lab default avatar. That's not for any fitted mesh avatar. These are the settings that you can set for it. You can set it to have its face with the mouth closed, or all these other ones. It will not affect fitted mesh avatars or custom mesh heads or anything like that. It's just for the Linden Lab default avatar that the animation will have an effect. So you can do the same thing with the hands. Okay, so if you want to have the animation, if you want that avatar to move around like it does in this animation, right? She moves forward and then she moves back, right? You need to turn on global avatar position. Okay, and that's going to do the translation animation on the M pelvis, so that she moves forward and back. Okay, if you didn't have that on there and you exported it out, she wouldn't move forward and back, and her arm would just move. Okay, that's what global avatar position does. Okay, now if you had technically the M pelvis is not rotating, it's translating. It's moving in the translate. If we went to cable channel, see, it's moving in the translate along the x-axis. Okay, that's what's happening here. Okay, that's a translation animation. See, translate. It's a translation animation. And so, by default, the only bone, if you don't have this turned on, the only bone that actually ends up with a translation animation on it is the M pelvis. Okay, because that's the root of the skeleton. Okay, but if you have other bones, like say you had an animation where her other arm was stretching out like rubber, and the bones were actually not rotating, but they were actually moving positions. They weren't changing scale. Changing scale is different. You cannot animate scale changes. You can only animate rotation and translation animations. So here, these first three, and the scale 3 down here, you can, no, not the scale, the first 3D, or the first 6, I should say, from translate to rotate Z. You can animate those, but you cannot animate scale. So if you wanted her arm to stretch out, you could actually do that with a translation animation. But I don't think you could do it. Yeah, you can't do it with the human IK system, because the human IK system, human bones don't stretch out like that. See, watch. See, it doesn't stretch out. Okay, so that's what human IK means. It's set up for a human avatar, so it's going to be able to, it's going to move the bones that are consistent with a normal human being. So like the elbows will never bend backwards. You know, the shoulder will rotate backward, because that's normal. But you see how her elbow bends? But it never bends the other way. Okay. But you can translate, if you really get into it, you can translate the facial bones, the face bones, to give facial expressions and all that kind of stuff. If you really get into it, you can do that. This is just basically set up for just basic body animations. You know, basic body animations is what this is set up for. Okay. So you have those. And then if you are doing include joint translations, like if you're doing face animations and moving the bones by moving them instead of just rotating them, you would include joint translations. Turn that on. And what this does here, then this little option opens up, and what this does is just make sure that whatever translation animations you're doing, there is a limit to how far away from the skeleton it can go. I think it's either like 10 meters. I think it's 10 meters or 20 meters. I'm not sure exactly how far a bone can move. How far can you take like the wrist bone and stretch it way out there? I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's like 10 meters. It might be more, it might be less, I'm not sure. Way more than you ever really would probably ever need. Okay, so let's turn these off. Okay, then you have resample frames and every single frame. That's what it means. Every one frame, resample it. That means that the file, when you export it out, it's going to have information for every single frame, 10 through 36. That's 26 frames. There are times when you want to set this to a higher number. If you put it 2, then what it's going to do, it's going to sample every other frame. So it will sample frame 10 and 12, but not 11 or 13 or 15. It's going to sample every other one, which will make your file size half the size it was before. And that can come in very handy, because the smaller the file size, the faster it loads in Second Life. And lots of times you don't need animations that have every single frame, sampled. Or keyframed, however you want to put it. Sometimes they refer it to keyframing, although that can get kind of confusing, because all these red slashes that you see here where I did those keyframes, these are also keyframes. So it can be a little confusing in some of the terminology. I think the BBH exporters call it keyframing. Let me see. No, it's also sample frame. It's also the same. Okay, so it's a sample frame. So so it takes a sample of those every other frames. Okay, and then what it does is, even though it's technically half as many frames, it's still going to play it so that the animation still takes the same amount of time to play. So it's going to say you had 30 frames, right? I think the frame rate in Second Life is 30 frames per second. And so you have 30 frames, so that's a 1 second animation. If you did set this to 2 and you exported it out, it would have 15 frames in the file. But it would still play it. It would play it not at 30 frames per second. It would play it in Second Life at 15 frames per second. So it will take the same amount of time to run through the animation, but it will be only 15 frames, which will be half the file size, because there is a file size limit to how big animations can be. I think there may also be a time limit, but I'm not sure. I think they might have removed the time limit in favor of just having a file size limit. And so the more efficient you are with your sample frames, the longer your animation can be, I believe, but I'm not 100% sure. There might be a time limit, but it's like you can run out of file size before you reach the time limit. So it's still a good idea to put it. So there might be a time limit, but I'm not 100% sure. But I know there's a file size limit, and this helps to reduce your file size. So that would be every other frame, that would be every third frame, every fourth frame, every fifth frame, and so on. The downside to not having it on every single frame is if you're doing an animation that is very intricate, somebody shuffling cards, or doing sign language, you would want to have it on every frame, because that means it's going to play exactly like you see it in Maya, and it's going to be really accurate. When you start resampling frames, the animation can start to look a little jerky. It's going to start to look a little jerky. Well, sign language where it's jerky is not going to look good. It might even become unreadable by somebody who knows sign language. or not understandable by somebody who reads sign language. You know, like a animation that does a magic trick. You might want to have every single frame. But say you're doing somebody playing football, right? Football is not real intricate movements. You could probably get away with a 4, you know, or a 5 or something like that keyframe, and because it just, the faster the motion, you think of it this way: the faster the motion, somebody throwing a knife, you don't need every frame sampled. You could do every 4th frame on a knife throw, and it would look just fine. So the faster the movement, the more motion blur you can think of seeing it when you watch the animation, the higher the frame resample number you can choose. Okay, so there's, you know, so every single frame is not really, that's a bit of overkill on almost all animations. Every other frame would be more of a standard to have it. So, so the benefits of .anim also is that there is no optimization process. What file you create as a .anim is what is going to be uploaded to Second Life with no changes. So what you see in Maya is what you're going to basically get in Second Life. BBH, it's a little bit different. It goes through an optimization process, and your animations may look a lot jerkier than you thought they were going to look. Although there are some benefits to BBH, because you can actually change the playback speed in BBH by manually editing the BBH file. So there is some benefits to BBH, but overall .anim is a lot better. So okay, so then once you have these settings set, then you just click Export Anim, and what it's going to do is it's going to run through the animation for each bone that is being animated. Okay, and you saw it ran through like 3 times, right? It runs through the animation 3 times because 3 bones were affected. The end pelvis bone by moving it back and forth, the shoulder bone by rotating, and the elbow by rotating. So it had to run through the whole animation 3 times. Now that's going to take, on a very complicated animation, it's going to take a little while to run through it. BBH only runs through the animation once, so it exports out faster, but .anim is, you're going to get more consistent results from it. Okay, so what are the benefits? Okay, so that's the .anim, and you saw that I exported it out. What is the difference between MyAniMATE LT and the regular MyAniMATE? Well, the difference is, like, the MyAniMATE LT cannot do couples animation. It can only do a single avatar animation. Maya LT doesn't have, when you're creating the human IK, doesn't have any sort of helpers or to help you create your own custom rig. Doesn't have anything like those, while the full version of MyAniMATE does have helping scripts that will help you generate your own rig if you control custom rig if you really want to. Let's see, there was a third one, and I'm trying to remember what it was. Oh yeah, the third one is the full version of MyAniMATE. You can set the bone priorities of each bone. Okay, so not only can you set the overall priority, like here, there's a little map, there's a little button that you can set on a map, and you can set individual bones. So you could say, like, the overall priority is 2, but say you want the individual bones, say the arms, you want that to have a much higher priority, so that you can go into the bone map and you can set those bones to have a higher bone priority. But MyAniMATE Lite, not MyALite, MyAniMATE Lite does not have the ability to set individual bones priority. People who are going to want to have individual bone priority are people who are going to be really into animating, and you might at some point need it if you're making animations for yourself or to sell. And so that's to encourage you to get the full version. Obviously, the light version is to get you to be able to do the basic animations that you need almost all of the time. And most MayaStar users are going to be able to be just totally fine with Maya Lite to make poses and little animations. That this will work out just fine. Okay, so that's .anim. Let's do BBH. Okay, so we'll go into scene. And let's activate female original. Okay, and once it's done coming in, okay, it's done coming in, then the next thing we do is you click on MyAniMATE Lite, generate a skeleton. We're going to say yes, that has some collision volume bones, or in the skeleton. Like I said, it doesn't really matter. You could say yeah, so anyway, if you're not, you could say yes or no. It's not a huge difference. I usually just say yes, or you can say no. I think that's if you want to animate the collision volume bones, you can say yes. But anyway, but this time we're going to be ready. We're going to animate for BBH. So we're going to say BBH. And we're going to say IK rig. And boom, it's ready to animate. Now you might notice that the grid down here is bigger than it was for the .anim. And that's because .anim uses meter scale, and Second Life is in meters, right? Which means if you had a car or something you were animating, or say you had a bar, you know, a bar, and you wanted somebody to be standing at the bar and their hand on the bar, and you know the height of the bar, because you can measure it in Second Life. Well, then you could just create a cube, make it the right height in the anim if you're animating for .anim, and you could then place the avatar's hands on the bar, and you would know that it would be in the right spot for the animation. So anim is much easier because the scale correlates exactly with Second Life. So that's another reason why .anim is great. Well, BBH, its scale is not inches, is not meters or centimeters, it's inches. And so the avatar is bigger than the centimeter avatar, but it is not as big as the meter avatar. That's why this down here looks bigger. And if we come here to the, oh, not the body controller, if we come here to the avatar skeleton, we can see that the skeleton is actually, okay, when you scale up an avatar from centimeter size to meter size, you scale it up 100 times bigger. So you scale it up to an X, Y, and Z of 100. And that's the scale that the .anim works at, okay? But BBH being in inches, we had to make it 39.37. And there's a reason, because it's when you convert inches to meters, it's like 39.397 or something like that. I figured this out a long time ago, so I'm not even 100% sure. But yeah, anyway, but it's the conversion from inches to meters, or is it centimeters to inches? I can't remember which one it is. So anyway, so you just have to scale up the avatar 39.37, which means if you had, say, a box that was a meter tall in Second Life, and you wanted to animate to that box to be in the scene here, so you can animate with it being in the right proportion, you would first create a meter size box, right? Then you could shrink it down to centimeter size and freeze transformation it. You know, so you would start off with a meter, then you would shrink it down by changing X, Y, and Z to 0.01, which is 100 times smaller, and that would make it small. Freeze transformation on it again, so that now, and then scale it up, because now it's a centimeter box, and then scale it up to 30, you know, where you change it to the scale to 0.01, freeze transformation, so the scales become 1, 1, and 1, and now it's a tiny box, and then scale it up to 39.37 X, Y, and Z, and that would now be in the right scale for this avatar. And you can see how that can get very, very confusing, you know. So that's one of the benefits of animating with anim or for anim versus BBH, but it is possible. But this avatar now is ready to animate for BBH, and we could do the same exact animation that we did before, you know. Oh, I'm sorry, we went to 24. And then we could do the same animation here where, you know, keyframe here, keyframe here. I think it was like 16 or something like that. That we brought it out. Keyframe there. Copy. Paste. And now we have... Oh, I forgot to do her arm. Okay, forgot to keyframe it. We were there, but I forgot to keyframe it in the new position. Okay, so now we got the same basic animation that we did before. Okay, and this thing, not only can you move left and up, forward and back, left and right, you can make her go up and down. You can rotate it if you want to rotate it. You know, so you can do all sorts of animations on that. So anyway, so now we're ready to export out the BBH. So what you do is you come back up here, you come out here, and you go to the old BBH exporters, and because this one is the one you want to use if you're just doing rotation animations and translation animations on the M pelvis, or translation and rotation on the M pelvis, and rotation animations on everything else, all the other bones. And even though it looked like I had, and so then you just open it up and you just do the normal, you know, this would be 10 through 36. This again, this is the same thing, either every frame or every other frame. Just leave these settings. Don't worry about that. You set this manually, and then you find out this is going to the desktop, and then you just click OK or apply and you export it out. So if I click OK, see, it just went through the animation one time and it was done. Okay, so those are the benefits. Those are the two different animations. I was going to say, the last thing I was going to say is it looked like I was doing translation animations on this control rig here because I was using the move. Move is like translation, but these control rigs, they're designed to, while the control rig itself was a translation animation, the bones rotated. That's the difference. You see, the bones rotated to get into those positions. So, and it's the animation on the bones that gets animated out, not the animation on the controls. But you can also, on many controls, you can also do rotate. I don't know what's going on with her finger there. Looks kind of funky. Got to look into that. But just like this one here, you can either translate it to make her head roll, or you can rotate it. See, rotate, it might have a slightly different behavior than translate. Depends on the look. There you go. That's one way to get her head in that position, is you translate it and rotate it. Okay. So those are the basic animations. Those are the basic controls for MyAniMATE. And I will be doing other videos on how to animate and how to you know, that go into more in depth about how to animate. This is more just of more of an in-depth look at MyAniMATE new feature. But yeah, I will be doing other videos showing how to animate and export out animations and that kind of stuff. So yeah, anyway, so that's it. I hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks, bye.